Hi, everybody. My name is Eric Gardner. I'm a member of the Wikimedia Foundation's design system team. And I'm here to talk about a project that we've been working on for a while. We recently released kind of the 1.0 version. It's called Codex. So it's the new design system for Wikimedia. And I wanted to talk about it here in the hopes that it might be interesting or useful to some of you all in building your own features on your own wikis. So yeah, I'm just going to introduce what we've been working on. So like I said, my team is pleased to announce that recently, last fall, we finally released version 1.0 of Codex, which is a new design system for the Wikimedia movement, and also it's embedded in MediaWiki itself, so you can use it outside of the WMF projects as well. This is a screenshot of the documentation website. I'll pull it up later and talk more about what Codex is, what it includes. So to start off with, what is a design system? So a design system is a collection of a lot of things, reusable parts, style guide, and recommendations. But the idea is, it's a set of tools. It's a toolbox to ensure a consistent and cohesive user experience across different products and platforms. So Codex, which is our design system, has a couple of different elements or like layers. The basic foundational layer is this thing called design tokens. This is maybe sort of a buzzword that gets used a lot in like web design world now. So these are like the smallest units of like a design decision. Like they translate into things like CSS or less variables. Then we have a library of assets. This is mostly icons right now. So we have a bunch of icons that are very language agnostic, internationalizable. And then finally, the kind of the main entry point for most people is going to be a collection of UI components. Now, these exist in both JavaScript and CSS flavors. I'll talk more about those. And then tying them all together is a set of guidelines or documentation about how to use these things, what kind of interfaces to build and why. So all these things together make up a single system, and that's Codex. So design tokens, like I said, they're the foundational layer. They represent individual decisions. Sometimes we call them decision tokens about, hey, the main primary color for this thing should be this particular shade of blue. The hover state should be this color, etc. So these this is published as its own package in NPM. It's also available in MediaWiki Resource Loader. You can access most of these as less variables if you're using Resource Loader. And we're going to increasingly start delivering them as like CSS variables too. That'll be useful because we're working on supporting things like the sort of dark mode that Vector will have soon. So you could say, hey, I want this to be like the primary color, and that will automatically flip when the UI flips into the dark mode. So the more you rely on things like the design system, design tokens, the easier it will be to integrate with features like that when they come online. So in addition to the design tokens, we of course have this pretty comprehensive library of icons. At the time of making the slide, there were 237. There might be a few more now. What's cool about the icons that we have is, in a text editor, you usually see like a bold and italic underline icon. Not every language does the word for bold start with the letter B. So, in some languages, it's a G or some completely different character. So we have that built into our icon system. So again, it's a little bit more international. Similarly, a lot of them offer variants that are flipped for RTL. Finally, the layer that's probably the most interest to people here, and I'll spend the most time talking about it, are the actual components. So this is like, if anyone's familiar with OOUI, Codex in many ways is the successor to OOUI. It will eventually supersede OOUI on our project. I don't think OOUI is going to just disappear overnight, but the future, we're definitely encouraging people to use Codex for projects going forward within the foundation. I think outside of the foundation, it's more like what we want. The components are like interactive building blocks, UI widgets, and the idea is we want to empower developers to create consistent and powerful user interfaces without having to constantly reinvent the wheel. So the core Codex component library is a set of Vue 3 components. So Vue.js is a JavaScript framework. It's kind of similar to React. I was also involved in efforts to bring Vue into MediaWiki a few years back. And so again, it's just, I think in the past, maybe the front end side of MediaWiki has lagged a little bit behind. And so we're trying to build in more modern tools and make them available for people to provide more kind of interactive experiences. But we also want to make sure that we cover, sort of backwards compatibility, people that are operating in low bandwidth environments, hardware. So there's also a CSS-only version of most components as well. So JavaScript is not a strict requirement for using Codex, though the better experience will generally be the JS one. They're extensively documented, so I'll talk a little bit about, I'll show our documentation in a little bit. I can show some of these in a little demo. Finally, for any designers in the audience, we also have like an extensive set of Figma libraries. So Figma is like a web design platform. I think you have to make an account, which you can do for free, but then you can actually log in and like copy the Codex Figma libraries into your own account, even if you're not affiliated with the foundation in any way. So those are accessible too. Some key features of Codex. One really important priority for us is accessibility and also internationalization. So the color palette that we use has been carefully, thought out to make sure that certain minimum levels of contrast are met in different environments. Again, that's becoming really important as we look at supporting alternate color palettes for like a dark mode to make sure that, hey, even when you invert things, there should still be a basic level of contrast to make sure that users with poor vision can still see things and understand what's going on. We also build in as much as possible, best practices for like ARIA attributes, keyboard navigation. We recently did an audit with the American Foundation for the Blind on the current state of our components, where we had actual, blind and physically impaired users go and use a bunch of our stuff and let us know. And the results were pretty good. They give us some good feedback that we're working on, but also I think overall it's pretty positive. So we're trying to build in as much accessibility as possible so that people who use Codex to build their own UIs and experiences get a lot of that benefit for free. And then, like I was saying before, we're also building things to work in other languages. So right now, no English strings are embedded in the Codex components. It's just passed in by the user. So that kind of works with MediaWiki's internationalization system. In the future, maybe we'll embed some like a more sophisticated way to handle this, where you might have some global plugin that you say, okay, it's change all the strings used in the components to this language or that language. But we're definitely not like hard coding, one language. We're designing it to be multilingual, and also we design everything to work in an RTL context as well. So yeah, we want things to be multilingual, internationalizable. Like I said before, we support both JS and Node.js usage of these components. So the kind of the sort of main version of all of these components is a Vue component. That's kind of, I guess you'd say we're JS first. So we're designing things, we're using Vue 3, we're writing this code in TypeScript. But in most cases, a CSS-only version of the component is also available. And you can use that kind of in the way that you'd use like a bootstrap thing, where you'd have to provide your own markup and then you'd put like a CDX button or a CDX icon class on something. Assuming you load the appropriate style sheet, it would work. And then the icons and design tokens are available as their own libraries and they can be used in a variety of environments. Finally, we've been working on some performance optimization within MediaWiki. So Codex was developed as a standalone library outside of MediaWiki, but we've also been doing some work in MediaWiki core itself, specifically in like the resource loader part of the code base. One thing that a lot of modern like UI bundling, like things like Rollup or Vite, like some of this software can do something called code splitting, where maybe you take an application, you break it up into different bundles, so that only the things that are strictly necessary are delivered to the client. MediaWiki, of course, it's an all PHP tech stack, so we don't at the time have the ability to like run Node.js code and do like a front-end build step to optimize these assets the way that you might if you were using another web application framework. However, the build tools that we use in Codex, so outside of MediaWiki, we are able to publish basically a dependency graph of like, oh, well, this component needs that component, this one needs the icon. And that's data that we embed in MediaWiki. So then in the resource loader PHP code, we're able to say, oh, if somebody just wants to show component A on their page, we know that that needs components B and C, and so it goes and gets the code automatically. So we're able to do some code splitting or tree shaking just in PHP. We're interested in going a step further and doing full server-side rendering of JS components. That's something a lot of people would like. One advantage of that is if anyone's ever worked with Vue, it's like a very nice declarative experience for like authoring user interfaces. It's pretty similar to HTML. You can write single file components. It's very ergonomic, I would say. It's harder to do this in MediaWiki because you still have to, if you're building like a special page where you wanted a bunch of Codex-based UI, you'd have to also do it in PHP, and maybe you'd want to do like the CSS-only version for people with Node.js, and then you'd replace it with the JS version. So you'd be kind of defining the UI twice. We want to get away from that. So one way to do that would be to do server-side rendering of the JS interface. Again, that's something we don't really have the tools in MediaWiki to do right now, but it's something we're exploring. So one question, I was chatting with Cindy about this earlier today, but like, what would it mean if MediaWiki either optionally or most or all of the time included a Node.js runtime and stuff like this? I don't know. Food for thought. Outside of MediaWiki, Codex is also, you can use it in a standalone way. It's a great fit for like ToolForge apps and things like that, where some of the limitations of MediaWiki no longer apply. So you could make a standalone, like single page app use Codex in ToolForge or some of these other contexts. It's available in NPM. And maybe I'll just show our documentation site real quick and some examples of the components I'm talking about if it's possible. Can I just minimize this? Yeah, okay, so it's good. Cool. So you can find us. If you go to the doc.wikimedia.org page and scroll down to the user experience, Codex is right here. And this is our documentation site. So we spent a lot of time and energy on the docs. We consider the documentation really important. You can see, there's a section for each different layer of the system here. For the components, all of these demos are interactive. So like, what does the Codex dialog look like? We have design guidelines, but we also have a variety of interactive demos. Here's the basic one. Maybe I want to see like, the code for both usage outside of MediaWiki, usage inside of MediaWiki. So the way that you would use Codex components in most cases is you would, if you were like an extension or skin developer, you would you'd have like resource loader modules where you could require this. So that's the main way you could get it. We're also working on making it easier to use Codex in gadgets and user scripts. That work is kind of ongoing. But anyway, the documentation is very extensive. We spent a lot of time on this, so I would definitely encourage folks to take a look if you're interested. And finally, if you want to get involved, all of these things are available in MediaWiki now. Codex is also available as a series of NPM packages under the @Wikimedia name. The Figma libraries are also available, like I mentioned, and the documentation site, I showed that too. And if you have questions or you want to contribute, we're in Harrit, whatever you want to call it. Also on GitHub, we have a mirror there. You can find us on Fabricator, Codex, and the design system team tags. And then we have a MediaWiki page that has a lot of information about using Codex in MediaWiki itself, including like what kind of things you need to ask for a resource loader to use it, how to use the code splitting feature, things like that. And yeah, contributions and feedback are welcome. And yeah, this is my team. We're working on this constantly. The work is ongoing, so please let us know what you think. We'd love hearing feedback, both positive and negative. And that's it. Thank you.
A quick question.
Yeah, so a lot of the components in Codex look the same as the ones in OpenUI. So
yeah.
What is the main difference between the two then?
The usage is different. I think it's a lot easier to use. We chose to make it like match OOUI basically. You could say that both Codex and OOUI implement this sort of basic Wikimedia design language, which is pretty like neutral and encyclopedic. But Codex is written with a much more modern set of tools and libraries, I guess, and it's where the focus is going to be for development efforts going forward. So I would say the main benefit from a developer perspective of Codex is you get to use Vue. So like it's a lot easier to handle like user input, changing data from the user. You get a reactive UI, for example. I think it's just generally a lot easier to work with too. You can compose components inside of each other. So like building a complex UI out of OUI widgets, I've done it. It's painful. I think it's a lot easier in Codex.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. But visually, we want them to be pretty similar. But in the future, I think Codex will start to move over on that. So,
It's already around here, coders time. So, thanks. You want to
yeah, you know where to find me.